Hey, everybody, this is Ken Tucker, and welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ian and Paul. Jen could not make it today, but she says hello to everybody. And we have a special guest that we're all really excited to talk to. And it's somebody that Ian and I have trained under. Honestly, I think we were blown away by the stuff that you know and that you can talk about. And so we're really honored to have John Loomer on our show today, who I think is one of the foremost Facebook ad gurus on the planet. So welcome, John.
Oh, thanks so much, Ken. No, I appreciate you guys having me today.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited to talk to you, especially with some of the new stuff that you're getting into. So, John, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got started doing this, and yeah, just whatever you want to share.
Well, I think it's a bit of a unique story, right? But also in a way, probably not all that unique, in terms of like how some people get into business. Because I think I'm like a lot of people who wasn't trained in what I'm doing, but basically what happened was I had experience in Facebook first of all, and that goes way back. I mean, that's 15 years ago now.
It's crazy.
I worked for the National Basketball Association, and this was my first exposure to the platform. Um, as the league, we partnered with Facebook. There were 50 million users on the platform. It was just moving on beyond high school kids and college kids to us old folks, and I fell in love with the platform at the time. But we were using it for business reasons, right? So we partnered with Facebook to create an app before you could create your own.
Okay.
There weren't Facebook pages yet. I was the admin of the official NBA Facebook group before there were pages.
Okay.
I mean, that's just how early we're talking here. So, I got between that and some other stuff I did after that, I was getting more and more comfortable, with what was becoming social media. I left the NBA and would end up getting laid off twice in like 2.5 years. And at that point, I was both spoiled in terms of some of the jobs I had, but also not wanting to move my family again. We had three at the time young kids, and I didn't know how to start a business. I had a philosophy degree, and
I thought you were a fellow philosophy major. Me too.
awesome. And so prepared for everything and nothing at the same time, basically.
Exactly.
Um, so, but basically what I did, because of some of the things I learned pretty much starting with the NBA, although I'd say it even went beyond before that with fantasy basketball and fantasy sports in general, which was a world I was in at the time. I knew some things about websites. So I started johnloomer.com again, really just thinking I was going to use it as like, let me talk about the things I know how to do. And so I can get a job. And I just longer and longer, I didn't have a job. I just kept writing because that's all I had time to do. And I had some hits where all of a sudden I was driving a ton of traffic, and I started writing more and more about Facebook marketing and Facebook advertising. I started using that to build this, whatever this was. It wasn't a business yet. And I mean, it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I guess maybe I'm going to create a product. And I started, selling training for Facebook advertising in 2012, and been doing it ever since. I mean, it's been a pretty unique adventure. I mean, it exploded pretty quickly from there. But any kind of I think especially in social media and just the way the technology is these days, and things keep on evolving, you have to keep evolving too. And it's one area where I should have done more of, because I tried to keep my business, keep doing things the way I always was, and now I've got to start adjusting and making changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just the nature of being in the world of digital marketing these days, regardless of what you're working on. Things change. So, John,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about what you've seen happening, over the Facebook ad landscape over the last year or a couple of years. There have been some big changes with Apple and, their privacy. changes and how that's impacted advertising. But I'm sure there are a lot of other things that you're saying. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
But really, it's been huge. I mean, when Apple came out with their changes, um, the way I describe it is it caught Feta, Feta, Facebook slash Meta. I don't know what to call them. So
Yeah.
flat-footed, because that's one of the few times they have not been in control of the situation, and so they were clearly not very well prepared for it. And so basically what happened was anyone opening the Facebook app, Instagram app, any of those apps, really, most apps from an iOS device, you'd have to decide whether or not you wanted to allow tracking that could ultimately be used for things like advertising. And so that would hurt Facebook in their ultimately for attribution. So determining whether or not someone clicking or seeing your ad led to a conversion, but also building audiences for retargeting and all sorts of things. So Facebook had to make a bunch of changes. I think in some ways they may have overreacted and taken an ultra conservative route in the things that they took away, but ultimately it hurt advertisers. So the number of reported conversions went down for advertisers pretty drastically. I think it very likely impacted Facebook's ability to optimize to get you good results. And broadly, it's I mean, we've seen it. Meta's reporting a drops in advertising, drops in revenue. And this was a big issue. Now, within the last month or so, what's been very curious, and maybe ask about the timing because we're hitting the holidays, is suddenly they're bringing some of this stuff back that they got rid of. So a big one that advertisers need to know about is 28-day click attribution. So before all the iOS changes, the way a conversion was defined and the way an ad was giving credit for a conversion was if somebody clicked on your ad and then ended up converting within 28 days. So that's a really wide window, or saw your ad, didn't click on it, but still converted within a day. All that stuff was possible because all the tracking that was going on. They then moved it to 7-day click and eventually brought back the 1-day view after all the iOS stuff. So first of all, I can contend that was the biggest impact to advertisers rather than all the opt-out stuff.
Okay.
Because even with the opt-outs, you still would get enough data that would help you as an advertiser. So anyway, that 28-day click attribution is back. I don't know if all advertisers have it back yet, but it's not reported by default. So it's still reported 7-day click, 1-day view by default, but you can basically add a column to your reporting to show how many conversions happened within 28-day click. That's big because all of a sudden it can completely change your impressions of did this campaign work or not.
Right.
Because there are all these conversions that happened that always have been happening, but we just haven't known about for the last year and a half. And now we can see them again. And then previously we might have turned the campaign off, lowered budget, whatever, because we're like, oh, that's not working. And now you may see that there are 10% more conversions, 20%, whatever it is. Honestly, anyone with a product that costs more or is, just a higher commitment level that's going to take longer to make a decision, those are the advertisers, the brands are going to see more of an impact from this.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one. But they brought that back. They brought a tool that's closely related, one that allows you to compare the attribution windows. So you can see how many conversions happened within 1-day view, within the 1-day click, within the 7-day click, and now within the 28-day click. And previously, after iOS happened, they got rid of that. So it was all thrown within one bucket, which was really difficult because you could have stuff like if you did remarketing where you're targeting people who are getting your email on the same day, and they act on the email didn't act on your ad and maybe barely saw it, your ad would get credit. And as long as you can compare windows and get some context of like, okay, well, 30% of these conversions were view through,
Yeah.
then it's okay. But once you have no context of that, you never really know if your numbers are inflated or whatnot. So that one's back. And there's another one that's a breakdown to see, okay, you could break down by placement, for example, see how many conversions happened within each placement. That's another item. It's not just placement, but there are multiple breakdowns that came back. So a lot of changes that just happened within the last really about a month that made this interesting, because up until now, everything since iOS seemed to be taken away, and making things harder.
Have you seen any trends in terms of ad spend budgets then from advertisers?
So overall, it's been down. Now we're reaching that point, the holidays, where typically, so this is be an interesting time.
Yeah.
Typically, ad budgets go up. But there are a couple of things we're seeing right now. And another sign of that is the CPM cost. So CPM being the cost per thousand impressions. Usually the more advertisers you have in the system, the more money you have in the system, the more competition, CPM costs go up because it's an auction. And CPM costs have been down this year compared to last year, which again is at least partially connected to overall advertiser spend and that being down. So, and there's also a resource I use called Within Marketing Pulse. It's within.co. It's just a free website. They have like $500 million in clients and ad spend. And so they provide some data on what they're doing. So you can kind of get a sense of, how their ad spend compares for Facebook, Instagram, and Google, and their CPMs, and compared to last year. It seems that overall the ad spend, at least for the last month, is pretty much on par with last year. But once again, CPMs are down. So, but again, the holidays are the weird part that you don't know what's going to happen. Back in the day, really before the iOS stuff and before COVID and everything, we would see CPMs triple and sometimes even quadruple during this time. So
Yeah.
I guess
Wow.
we'll see.
Yeah. All right.
So, John, hey, this is Paul.
Hey.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that businesses make when they do run Facebook ads?
I mean, I think there are a couple. First is just looking at the wrong metrics or obsessing over the wrong metrics. So whether it's a vanity metric or metrics that were used to being important in other forms of advertising. So whether it's a click-through rate or a cost per click, and sometimes even the CPMs, like those things all matter, but they're really a secondary metric because usually you have one ultimate goal, whether it's a conversion or something else, and that's really what we should be tracking, is like how many of that one thing ended up happening, and what's the overall spend, and what's the cost to get that action. So I think that's part of it. I think that beyond that, just a misunderstanding of how optimization works can lead to wasting a lot of money. So, for example, if you want to drive traffic to your website, you just got to be ultra careful with this, because the way optimization works is you tell Facebook, hey, here's $50 a day. Send me as much traffic as you can. And Facebook will try to get you as much traffic for the lowest cost as possible. And to do that, there are weaknesses in the system to find you cheap clicks. And some of that's going to come from basically from placements, right? So Audience Network is the main culprit for this in your placements. That basically what Audience Network is people developers monetize their apps with a Facebook placement so that they can make money off their app that's otherwise free. But oftentimes what happens is people will click on these ads by accident, or it could be just the way they place their ads, whatnot. A lot of click fraud happens there as people are trying to make money on their apps.
Yeah.
And so you get a ton of traffic, and then if you don't dig further into your metrics, you'll think, oh, I'm doing great. I'm getting 3 cents per click or something. I'm driving a ton of traffic. And then you look at it and you're like, these people, no one's spending more than a couple seconds on the site. No one's converting. No one's doing anything. No one's coming back. So it's just a matter of, first of all, understanding how optimization works in the first place, some of the pitfalls of it, being able to kind of double check some of these metrics, and whether it's Google Analytics or something else, seeing on the back end what's happening as well, because you can get swept away by vanity metrics and kind of these surface level things that you put too much importance on.
Yeah.
Hey, John, Ian here. I got a question for you. Since your roots are in Facebook and we've started off this conversation there, what should a small business do to get the most out of Facebook ads with all that's been going on in the world of Facebook these days? What could a small business do to get the most out of it?
It first of all depends on the small business, right? So if you're a local business, I think a lot of the stuff that you could do is just simple location targeting, and so awareness. Especially you also have to decide, like, okay, what kind of business is this? Is this something where people might, like a restaurant, right? Where, oh yeah, that's the kind of food I like. I'm gonna go into the restaurant and based on this deal or whatnot. Or is it a service where you're only going to call me if you need me? Mm-hmm. So making sure you have those things understood, because getting a conversion, running conversion ads for a local business, for a plumber, for example, will be very, very difficult because the vast majority of people you're going to reach don't need you right now. So you kind of have to understand, when you're running any kind of ads as a service industry like that, is that your main goal is really more about awareness, so that when somebody needs you, they think of you. And then you have a lot of other marketing goals beyond that. Like, you need to take care of SEO, you need to do all this other stuff so they find you. But beyond that, like, yeah, if you're a small business, understanding with your budget how far it goes and how that algorithm works. So if you've got, let's say, it starts with, what is your goal, right? And so in determining a budget and what you're going to do with it, it's basically Facebook needs 25 to 50 of these actions per week to properly optimize, right? Per ad set per week to properly optimize. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't get good results if you don't get it, but it's basically the way the system works, that they need that information to learn to properly show it to the right people. So if you're going to optimize for things like sales, you need to have that in mind. Like, okay, well, how much is it going to cost to get each sale? And then multiply that by 50. Is that within your budget? And if it's not, which in a lot of cases it's not, for a small business, we got to think about, okay, what are some other things we can do to make an impact? And so that could be, first of all, like any kind of retargeting, so remarketing. So whether it's hitting your email list, or people have hit your website, if you've got enough people to target who have maybe added to cart, didn't convert, things like that, let's hit those people. Those kind of low-hanging fruit is what I refer it to. But otherwise, once again, it's kind of more of like an awareness play, a brand building play, making sure you're top of mind. But knowing then it's much harder to measure your success.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So having said all of that, do you see different forms of Facebook ads that are performing better right now for a lot of businesses? There are a variety. There are video ads, there are carousel, there are lead forms and lead ads. What are your thoughts about that? And again, is that going to be different from one type of business to the next?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say there's a format necessarily that's most effective. it's just one of the many things that helps determine whether or not something works, right? So like, you know, a video ad, I don't want to keep messing with plumbers here, but a video ad for a plumber isn't going to have the same impact as a video ad for, a sports franchise or something.
Yeah.
But I think that it's less about the format and more about, what the system is set up for most to work. And I do have some gripes with Facebook about this, but it's really for e-com. So, and this is really where it's been getting better and better, is if you've got a catalog of products that fall within a certain category. So let's say you sell shoes, and Facebook has this whole catalog. Not only can they run ads based on people who've been to your website and whatnot, and based on the types of shoes they're looking at, but there are other shoe retail companies out there as well, and they have their catalogs too. And so they could say, well, they looked at this very similar shoe, different brand, and they can use that information to promote your shoes, which is one of those really super smart things that, like, if you've ever shop for shoes on the internet, I bring up this example because I've experienced it personally. It's almost kind of creepy. It's like I was looking for a certain type of business casual-ish, shoe, and next thing I know, I'm getting all kinds of like different brands in my feed. It's like they knew I wasn't just looking for shoes, and it wasn't even a certain brand, but it was a certain type, certain category.
Yeah.
So that's where it's most powerful, honestly, is if you're e-com and you've got a catalog, make sure Facebook has your catalog, and it can work for you. It truly can. So yeah, that's my gripe though, is that's where it stops in terms of like all the really super smart stuff that the algorithm does.
Okay.
They're like, I keep pushing on Facebook on this one. Is like, I want to drive engaged blog post readers, for example, or people who are going to watch my videos and want to come back later. Not that they just watch it this one time, not that they read this blog, not that they go to my website for 5 seconds and to see it and leave. Like, I want them to give the same thought to optimizing for a purchase, and like all the things that went into that. Oh, they looked at all these other shoes, to who is going to be most likely actually care about my website and come back again. So it's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, and not because it works for some, and in some cases it could work a lot better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
John, so you touched on this a little bit, kind of on the surface. Money, budgets. All businesses have a budget, and a lot of small businesses are on a really tight budget. And so how can they know? We've seen this in the past where they want to run Facebook ads, but they only want to spend $50 a month or whatever it is. How can they determine what their ad budget on Facebook should be?
Yeah, it's really about, first of all, determining the goal, and it's having a realistic discussion with them too.
Right.
So what is it they want to accomplish? And if they say, and not only accomplish, but be able to measure. If they say, well, we want to get more sales, it's like, okay, well, Facebook can measure that and they can show the relationship to it. But in order to do that, we'll need to get 50 sales per week minimum. And in order to do that, it's going to cost probably, realistically, like what I would usually say is like, whatever is the cost of the product, I would say cut that in half and say that would be maybe how much it's going to cost per sale. So do we have that kind of budget? And if we don't, then we have to have that conversation. Like, we're not going to be able to focus on these new customers to sell. Now, we might be able to get some new customers. If you have a hard budget of $100 a month or whatever it is, we can run some ads. Just know that you probably won't even notice it as the brand, right? You probably won't notice the impact. That doesn't mean there won't be impact. There are going to be times where someone sees your ad and thinks of your brand because of the ad and comes and makes a purchase, but they're not going to come to the register and tell you, oh yeah, I'm here because of that ad.
Right.
And Facebook's probably not going to be able to tell you that either. So you have to look at it, once we're talking about those super small budgets, it's just part of marketing. Like some of it, you just don't know. Like you have to spend some money to get in front of your potential customers, and you're not always gonna be able to connect the dots on how much of an impact that made. You know, whether it's that billboard you put up on the side of the road, or a commercial you're in, or whatnot. It's just not always easy to connect those dots, but especially if you're not willing to invest more than, you know, a couple $100 a month or whatever that is. You just have to establish some appropriate expectations.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it sounds like you have, I mean, if they have a ridiculously low budget, you have to set the expectations. Your best opportunity is maybe to get some awareness with the ad budget that you've got. So put the pixel on your website, remarket to people when they're on Facebook, and stay top of mind that way. And that's going to get you some value out of a small budget. So there are definitely ways to take advantage of it. But for people to think that it's going to generate large sales,
right,
you know, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and really, like, the truth is, yes, if you got a low budget, you can get like a video view. If you look at actions that we can measure,
Yeah,
you can get, you know, a through play, and it may be pennies or 50 cents or whatever per through play. So you know that, oh yeah, this number of people actually watched it, and that's good. We don't know what they did after that. And yes, that they can be added to a custom audience. You can remarket to them. And yeah, I think that's the approach to take, is to focus on those types of smaller actions. And but it's a long-term play as well. You know, it's like, it doesn't mean this is going to all of a sudden drive in new customers that you never saw before this month.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, a lot of business owners think, hey, social media is free, Facebook advertising can't be that expensive. It's, you know, they kind of see it as a silver bullet, and, you know, like anything, that you have to invest time and expertise and money into it to make it work for you.
Yeah, it's got increased. I mean, I think part of the problem is originally it was pretty cheap.
Yeah,
And it's gotten increasingly more expensive every year as more and more advertisers have gotten into it, because again, it's an auction.
yeah,
So the more advertisers are spending money, the more it's going to cost. I think that, you know, generally it's the job of the advertiser to educate the client, help them understand what's reasonable, what's realistic. And also that, you know, if they don't have anything in place, if they've got a Facebook page that they don't manage, if they've got a website that they don't update and it's outdated, that makes the job of the advertiser infinitely more difficult. Or if they basically don't really have an email list. So all these other things, all these other assets that a brand can have can absolutely improve the impact the advertiser has, because it's like, oh, they already have this built-in audience that we can go ahead and target. So yep, they can make the job easier or harder.
okay,
Awesome. John, you actually came into my life, as Ken said, during some training we were at. And that's where my question's coming from, is talk to us a little bit about how, in fact, you're one of the unique people I find in the industry. First of all, your measured response, your strategic responses to some of these questions are pretty unique in the industry, because you hear a lot of, you know, I can get you 1 million leads by tomorrow for $100, you know, and you know, I was even watching you know, I'm in the Toronto area. I'm a Raptors fan. I was watching a replay of the game the other night, and of course, a YouTube commercial comes on, and it's directed at me because I'm a digital marketer, and it's like, we can radically change your Facebook ads for, you know, almost nothing, and you'll get 50x, right? So That's kind of the buzz out there that I think a lot of consumers and a lot of business owners are hearing. So I love your measured approach. I think it's fantastic. And the thing you taught us on at that session, which was several years ago now, so you've probably even evolved it beyond this. But you were talking about how most people think of ads of any kind as top of the funnel, that you hit people with ads and then you're trying to get them off the ad platform as quickly as possible into your own universe where you can nurture them. And one of the unique things you were talking about was that you can build on the platform, and in specifically for Facebook, you were teaching us that you can build a funnel and you can retarget people through their buyer's journey, essentially, of awareness, consideration, conversion, because most people who see an ad aren't ready to convert all the time, especially if, as you said, it's a bigger ticket item, right? These things take time. You need to be convinced that it's the right solution. But maybe talk a little bit about how you can create content and targeting for a Facebook ad funnel and how this works.
Yeah, so I think that's partly how a brand or advertiser, they just need to look at what do they have just immediate goals, or are these long-term goals? Do you want to develop long-term customers, or do we want to just generate as many quick sales as possible from people who may be running into you for the first time? And in some cases, that could be fine, right? So if it's a certain need that people have, and it's not so much an attachment to a brand, you don't really care quite as much about the long-term investment in somebody. But I know for me personally, I prefer a customer who has been on my email list for a while. So they've read my stuff, they've been on my free webinars, they know my style, they know what to expect, as opposed to someone who is fresh to my website for the first time, never heard of me before, doesn't know my style. They have a need. They sign up for training and they're like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting at all. Well, it's not what you were expecting because you didn't know really what I was all about and you haven't been exposed to me before. So not only is it good for me that it's more of like this long-term, long tail effect, it's better for the customer because they know what they're getting into. So I do prefer a little bit of the top, middle, bottom approach, where top of the funnel, you may actually spend the most money on the top, right? Exposing your brand to people. This is where, and every business is different as far as what you would be providing here and focusing on here. But it could be videos, it could be articles, it could be whatever. That just it's more of an awareness play. And for me, a lot of times it's been blog posts, and lately now it's more videos. And then you could remarket to those people to get them into your funnel. So get them into your email list. So now that they've been exposed to you for the first time, get them to your email list. So, because the thing is, I've found with the email list is that often does a better job of selling anyway than an ad does, Facebook ad does. That doesn't mean I don't sell on, and look, every brand is different, but that doesn't mean I don't sell on Facebook, but the email does the best. So I want to make sure I build that email list as well. And a lot of times I spend the absolute least on selling, but it's also to that smallest audience, those people who are already in that funnel, who know what I'm all about. So again, that's not for everybody, that approach. I think you can shorten that up with a lot of e-com too. And that, yeah, you've got kind of an awareness play, video about your product, those who, or send them to your website or whatever. Then you have another ad for people who have engaged with that in some way. And then, you could even have, eventually you got a discount or something to those people who went to the product page, added to cart, didn't convert. So you've got different funnels that'll work for different types of brands.
And do you think that type of funnel approach works with? I'm not thinking about plumbers this time as a service business, but one niche that we serve is dentists. Can that work in that type of service industry, or is something usually better, like just an awareness play?
Yeah, because I don't think typically you're going to be, going to that dentist's website. I don't think typically you're going to care to be on their email list unless you are their customer, right? So I think now there could be some remarketing, but basically based on that engagement with them. Like if you've been doing some awareness type of ads and brand building, you could still remarket to those people. But we're not talking about sending them into this big funnel of people go to your website and on your email list, building because why would someone join a dentist email list unless you're a customer already?
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
not many.
So you're talking more about the circumstance where we may do some exposure ads related to how this dentist can do braces or dental implants. And if somebody shows interest in that, we could retarget with something related to that specific service.
Right. And I think that's one of those things where it's like, okay, how do we reach the right group of people? We don't know who has bad teeth. But you might know who's a parent. And so if this is a situation of need braces for your child, I think what works for a situation like that too would be, okay, maybe they're not going to join your email list or go to your website, but if you have kind of a product focused video of how a process works and things like that, it's usually like just a messenger ad, right? So start a conversation with them about what their needs are, and because they're going to want to know how much it costs and all that kind of stuff, to at least get that conversation going to get them in. But ultimately, the funnel is going to be different for a group like that for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's transition to TikTok. I know that this is something, John, you're starting to experiment in and play around with and develop a lot of expertise around. So, and TikTok is on everybody's mind right now. I mean, it's just it's a platform that you can't ignore any longer. And I think a lot of businesses are like, okay, well, I ought to be on TikTok. They have no idea how to get on TikTok. They don't know what they should be doing on TikTok, let alone how to advertise on TikTok. So can you just kind of talk us through, how does a TikTok ad work, and how would you begin creating TikTok ads?
I would worry less about how a TikTok ad works and worry more about how TikTok content works, because TikTok ads that stick out as ads usually don't work on TikTok.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because honestly, if we would have had this conversation 2 months ago, I would have laughed about TikTok as something I would never do. But it's all part of this understanding of needing to evolve. And I've resisted short form video for the longest time and thinking I could just survive with blog posts. I mean, that's my video has thrived, but this is really the way where people are consuming content now is it's not just TikTok, it's short form video.
Absolutely.
So regardless of whether like TikTok is where you go, learning that type of format, I think, is more important than ever. And look, I got to tell you, firsthand experience, part of the reason I was kind of skeptical and laughed at it and everything else is like, I had no idea. Like it was overwhelming. Like the first time I opened up that TikTok app and tried to make a video, I had no idea where to start with it or what a good video looked like or anything. So what I would recommend, first of all, is like just whether it's TikTok or Facebook Reels or Instagram Reels, also YouTube Shorts, just get on it. Start following people that are in that industry that you're in, and kind of get a sense of what's working, what you like. I mean, that's something I figured out pretty quickly. Is like, oh my gosh, get to the point. And I moved to the next one, right? Well, that stuck with me as a user because I know that I am someone who rambles and rambles. Like, so it could be a while to get to the point. Like, that's not going to work here. So it helped me a lot in a lot of ways because it helped me generate a process where, yes, I might sit down and record for 3 or 4 minutes, but then I edit it like crazy. Like I get rid of all my pauses, and like I take stuff where like, oh, that didn't really make sense, and I delete it, and I cut it down to a minute, and making sure there's some sort of hook at the very beginning. Not that it's like there's, you can be super salesy and cheesy, but just something so they know what's coming to stick around for. Like all these little things you learn over time, and to be, you know, informational, educational, entertaining in some way. But you learn these things, and really you don't learn them without consuming it and just creating some really bad videos. Like it wasn't until I embraced that I am going to create some really bad videos. It wasn't until that point that I felt more comfortable. Like I wasn't scared of creating bad stuff. It's like, no one's going to see it anyway. Like, who cares? Because you don't really have an audience in the beginning, you know? And so if you're creating bad stuff, no one's going to watch it. Like, it's not like it's going to go viral because it's terrible. Like if it's really terrible, maybe, but it's like, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. So it's just, I found that like we can hold ourselves back there because of this unknown, because it is completely different. So yeah, consume, create. It's going to be bad in the beginning. But in terms of the ads, if you've made any Facebook ads before, you will be comfortable with TikTok ads. That's the very first thing I realized when I jumped into TikTok Ads Manager. It's called Ads Manager. Almost everything is labeled the same as it is in Facebook Ads Manager. There's the learning curve is so short if you've already been in that environment. So now there are going to be some differences in terms of the types of things you should do there, which is again why I think you should create and consume first, because it's not going to be the same like when it comes to driving traffic and all those things to your website, because that's not really the way people consume content on TikTok. I mean, you can absolutely create conversions campaigns. I still haven't yet. Like I've started with everything just from the ground up. And that's also part of how you may want to reframe this entire experiment if you get into TikTok. And it was a really tough obstacle for me just getting to video, because I realized like if they watch your video, a lot of times they're not clicking anything. Like I want them on my website, and that kept me from doing it for years. But once you realize this is where they are, and you can gain a ton of trust from people and build your brand with people so they're thinking of you just by sharing good, valuable stuff. And it may not be on your website. It may be on TikTok. It may be on Facebook or Instagram Reels or something else. But it's you can get personality across. You can make an emotional connection so much easier with video than the written word. So it's just really valuable, but it does take a complete reframing and kind of leaving some of your biases aside of what you normally want.
I think you make a great point. You know, I think it was IBM that said, you know, you got to fail fast because the nature of business is failure. I mean, most of the time we fail, and we all have to recognize that sales is driven around failure. The best salespeople know how to deal with failure, move on, and go close deals. And so the same is true when you're creating content. I mean, sometimes you just need to get started. Like you said, you've got to have that situational awareness of what's going on, what are other people doing, what are people consuming, how are people in your particular industry operating on a particular platform. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, as a matter of fact, imitation in digital marketing actually is a really great strategy.
To a point, right?
To a point.
So, and look, I compare what I'm doing now to the early days of my business, where I didn't know what I was doing, and I just kind of looked to people like, you know, Amy Porterfield, Mari Smith, and like all these people who were kind of in that same area of what they were doing and how they built it, and I emulated a lot of that. But eventually, you have to have enough confidence to be like, well, no one's doing this, I'm going to do this, right? But you shouldn't necessarily start that way, because if people don't consume in a certain way, it just may not work at all. So, but yeah, it's a lot like my early part of my business. I created 70 videos in October. And it's kind of like when I started my business, I wrote blog posts every single day. And it wasn't because every single piece of content was good. You tried to make it good, but you learn from every single time you do it of, okay, well, what resonated with people, what didn't. I'm also like, I was crazy inefficient creating these. Like I was taking 2-3 hours to edit, record and edit them. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to burn myself out. Like I've got to find a better way to do this. So that's all part of that process too. So seeing what works with your audience, seeing what works for you in terms of creation, and coming up with a system and a schedule and all this, that you can't just sit down and map it out without having any idea of how it all works. So just diving into the fire. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said about understanding how the platform works and how content is consumed, because the TikTok algorithm is unique, and how they determine what content you see is different from any other platform. And that's something to understand. But that being said, so does TikTok have custom audiences, and how, if they do, how would you create them?
Yeah. So let me get to the first thing you said first, in terms of the algorithm, is that I think this is a benefit. So, and I've seen it as soon as I follow somebody new, I suddenly see their stuff all over the place. Like I'll see like 30 videos in a day. So it doesn't even matter when they created it. And that's the big difference between TikTok and like a Facebook. Is like that recency really matters on Facebook, or else it just disappears after a couple of days, unless people keep sharing it. TikTok has nothing really to do with sharing. You'll keep getting it surfaced to you if it's been getting a lot of engagement. So that's something that right away I realized, like, oh, this is another reason to create a lot of content, hopefully good content, and not be too worried about, even like time of day and stuff like that. Like people follow you, they're going to see your stuff. But so in terms of custom audiences, it's very similar, but also kind of like the old, like very almost primitive Facebook custom audiences, right? So there are, I think, 6 different categories of custom audiences. So basically this is targeting people who have engaged with you or on your customer list, something like that. So like their customer list custom audience, on Facebook, you upload your entire list. It can have a whole bunch of different columns, their first name, last name, email address, phone number, all this kind of stuff. And Facebook matches it up with users on Facebook. And you can have depending on how complete your list is, you can have a reasonably good match rate because of that. It could be, 50% or so will match up to a user and you can target them. Right now on TikTok, the primary way to create a data file custom audience is based on IDFAs. So that's device identifiers that none of us are probably going to have. That's more of like if you've got your own app that you might have that. But in testing, and luckily I'm part of this test, you can upload a file of email addresses or phone numbers. So it's just like the way Facebook email custom audiences were in the beginning, where it just had that one column of information. The result of that is it's like 10% is I'm getting for a match rate of the people on, because not everybody's on TikTok either, right? So 10% of the people on my list are on TikTok, which makes it really difficult. But between that, like one of the custom audiences is based on engagement with your videos, but with your ads, it's again different. So you can create on Facebook, create a custom audience of people who engage with your videos. It doesn't matter if they were paid or not. On TikTok, the primary engagement custom audience, you have to pick the ad set, they call it ad group, and if they engage with any of those videos, then they get added to your audience. But again, it has to be an ad, which is kind of weird. And then they've got a website custom audience, but it's virtually unusable because unlike Facebook, where it doesn't matter where they came from, like they could have gone from a Google search to your website, and because they did that, when they go to Facebook, you can retarget them. TikTok, they have to be referred from the TikTok app. And well, that's a problem because like I already mentioned, is like there's very little traffic going from TikTok to websites generally anyway. And they've got a minimum audience size of 1,000 in order to target people. So the typical business, small business, is not going to be generating 1,000 referrals from TikTok to their website to be able to remarket them. So that was one of my biggest. It's interesting because like I've actually had the TikTok pixel on my website for over a year or something, and it said that I had like 400,000 events, but my custom audience size was 4. I had 4 people on it. That's the number of people I'd referred. So I can't even use it. So it's basically, if you've created these before on Facebook, it'll be pretty normal, except for your expectations should be different in terms of how you can use them. You can create lookalike audiences as well. And honestly, that's probably where most of us are going to be using these audiences, because all those custom audiences have to be at least 1,000 people anyway.
Okay.
Hey, John, you talked a little bit before about your pivot to short form video, and I think in there you had some guidance, or at least you shared your experience in your journey on that. What kind of tips do you have for small businesses where they're trying to dip their toe in short form video on whichever platform? What kind of tips do you have for them?
Well, I would just think about, what is it that your target audience would care about and that would grab their attention within the first 6 seconds, ultimately is like the most critical time. So that small business, it's funny. I don't even know why it brought me to this, but it's like almost all the accounts I'm following are marketing related businesses. And one of them I'm following is this like, he's a dad. And he's probably 60 years old or something. And he just records videos about how to do stuff. Right. And like, this was important to me because I don't know how to change a tire, like stuff like that, and like he has little things like that that are just really valuable. And so it's like, okay, and I point that out. It's like, you have to have something of value. It's not just about, hey, I'm here recording stuff. Hi. It's like, you've got to have something to offer. And with your business, it could be, it's depending on the industry, the subject matter, it's just like blogging and anything that you create. It's not always self-promotional. It's this in this subject matter. Here's something that people really care about that might be really helpful to you. Right. Or if we're talking about something that's like a restaurant, it could be as simple as, showing them the food, showing them how things are made, and, introducing them to members of the staff and getting to know people and stuff like that. But I think every business is going to be different. The primary thing that we should always be thinking about, though, when we create content, it should be, what value can I add, as opposed to, how can I get people to buy my stuff? Because the buy my stuff thing will come later. The first thing you need to do is make an emotional connection, make it so people want to see your stuff and need to see your stuff.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thanks, John. I mean, this has been a blast. It's it's always great learning from you. I mean, we've all learned so much from you over the years, and we really appreciate you taking time out. Any other last thoughts or questions for John?
Yeah, it seems to me like from an advertising standpoint that TikTok's is still kind of primitive. Do you see them ever really being a viable competitor in the advertising space to Facebook? Because, I mean, they have the audience, that's for sure, but it sounds like the way you advertise on TikTok is so different.
It is different. I would say that, first of all, I'm not a foremost expert on TikTok advertising, but I would say that most of what TikTok is probably going to do in that space, in that commerce space, is similar to what Facebook's been trying to do, with Facebook shops and Instagram shops. So it's going to be a lot of selling things within the app. So again, it's kind of changing your way of thinking about, oh, I've got to send them to my stuff on this thing I own, trying to sell things within the app. So honestly, I do think that, I mean, this is the way it's going. There's a reason why Facebook, we should call them feta now. How they,
That's a cheese.
I know.
I want a salad, a nice Greek salad right now.
But there's a reason why they've been pushing so hard to that short form video content, is because TikTok is biting into their use, and they know that they need to do that. That's the direction this is going. And the question is going to be, what do ads look down the road if everything is in that format? And I think that's something that Facebook has to figure out too. Yeah. So, absolutely. I think now we have some questions about whether TikTok is going to be here in the US in the future. But beyond that, if it gets over that hurdle, it's absolutely, I mean, it's going to be a competitor, I think.
Well, and that's kind of consistent with, like, Google wants to keep you on their platform. Facebook wants to keep, and you're right. I think what you said about doing things within the app, I agree. I think that's kind of the direction a lot of these things are going.
Yeah, it's something that I resisted forever, just because I so much of my business was built on my website, and but I think we just have to eventually come to the realization that people don't want to go to your website sometimes. Like, you could still want them to go there, but if you try to force people to do things they're not used to doing, don't really want to do, then you probably have to find a new way. And that's like, okay, what was it that I was saying on my website that I want you to know about here? You can still communicate that within the app, because if it's always clickbait saying, oh, you got to read this thing I said, you're not going to believe it. They've got to go there to read it. People are going to get tired of you. So when they don't want to go there, so we've got to find ways to communicate these things of value while still, valuing our websites. But honestly, I think Google's the way that we're going to drive a lot of our stuff to our websites, our email lists, drive people to our websites. But if they're in a certain app where they usually stay there, understand that and try to improve their browsing experience there and give them value while you can.
Yeah, people on TikTok have a different mindset.
They do.
Well, I was talking to one of the business partners that we work with, and he talked about, when you think about advertising, he referred to 3 S's: social, shopping, and search. And which really ultimately gets to the intent of the user and the platform that they're on, and the nature of the platform. I mean, certain platforms are much more oriented towards shopping. Others are oriented towards search, and others are oriented, more towards social and engagement and things like that. So again, it all comes back to understanding your ideal customer, where they spend time online, and what objectives you want to try to accomplish. So.
Indeed. And I think this is it's kind of reflective of, the struggles I'm facing right now, but also willingness to evolve and understand things change.
Yeah.
Because, like, Google isn't necessarily going to be Google forever either. It looks like TikTok is actually taking a cut out of Google search.
Yeah.
So think about that. Well, if more people are going to start searching for what you can help them with on TikTok, once again, that's where a video is going to need to be the answer, not necessarily, click this link to find the answer. So it's just we have to just constantly be willing right now to adjust our thinking and evolve with everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, what's the best way for people to learn more about you and maybe partake of more of your wisdom?
I started to laugh because I go to johnloomer.com, right? Go to my website. But if you're not on my website, certainly on TikTok at John Loomer, Instagram at John Loomer, Facebook John Loomer Digital. I've also got a podcast, the Pubcast with John Loomer. And I try to be in as many places as I can, but that's where you start.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, John. I really appreciate you taking time.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.
This has been great. Thank you.
You bet.